Good afternoon, everyone. Well, I guess we are back. I want to welcome you today to the Rancho Mirage Library and Observatory. My name's Aaron Espinoza, and I have the distinct privilege of being the director here at the Library and Observatory and of this wonderful festival, Rancho Mirage Writers Festival. Thank you. Before we get started, can I please ask everybody to turn off your cell phones? I know you're out there. This was going to be my cue to have my dad call me and ask if my mom got the cookbook, but I couldn't get that timed out well enough. I'd like to begin by expressing our deep gratitude to those that are making these gatherings possible. First, to our founder, Jamie Kabler. Jamie, thank you for your vision, your energy, your unwavering commitment to this series and to the festival. Also, a heartfelt gratitude to our generous sponsor who is not in attendance today, but please give a round of applause for Jordan Snitcher. And then back for a second time today, we have our city council members, Mayor Pro Tem Lynn Mulatto, Council Member Eve Fromberg Edelstein, Council Member Steve Downs, and last but not least, Council Member Michael O'Keefe. Thank you for coming back and your ongoing dedication to our community. None of this would also be possible without the incredible staff here at the Rancho Mirage Library and Observatory, so thank you all for all that you do. Before we turn to today's program, I'd like to share a little bit about what's coming up in our writer series. We have a truly exciting lineup this season. Each program offers a different kind of story and a different kind of spark. On Tuesday, November 18th, we will welcome Paula Saunders, who will be discussing her new novel, Starting From Here. It's a powerful exploration of family, identity, and redemption, told with Paula's trademark compassion and insight. Then going into December, we have Molly Jong Fast, and she will be joining us with her new memoir, How to Lose Your Mother. It's sharp, funny, and deeply personal. A candid look at family, fame, and finding your own voice. And just a little side note, Molly Jong-Fast's father is actually one of our observatory docents at our observatory. So it's a nice little connection to Rancho Mirage. And then we're ending the season for our writer series on December 16th, where we will host Brant McDuff, author of The Shotgun Conservationist. Brant brings a fascinating and unexpected perspective on the connection between hunting, wildlife, and conservation. A book that challenges assumptions and invites reflection on our relationship with the natural world. Each of these programs promises to be thought-provoking, moving, and thoroughly engaging, so we hope you'll mark your calendars and join us for all three. With it being a full room, not everybody got a free book, so please, for those of you that did not and still want a book, please join our friends in the back, Follett bookstore. Dean is there to help you. I think he's only got a handful left when I last saw it. I'm trying to look, Dean. Yeah, he's only got like 5 left. He's showing me two hands, thankfully, no fingers, but so it looks like over 5, but... And then after this event, Emily will be signing off to the side here. So please, those of you that want the book signed or personalized, or just to say hi because you're a huge fan, please line up along the wall here and we'll get you over there as quickly as possible. Now turning to today's events. We're focusing on the world of food and the stories that bring us together around a table. It is my pleasure to introduce the moderator, Doug Miller, a longtime festival favorite and compassionate foodie. Doug has guided so many of our most memorable conversations, and we're thrilled to have him back today. Doug will be joined by our featured guest, Emily Weinstein. Emily is a food and cooking editor of the New York Times, where she oversees NYT's Cooking and writes the beloved 5 Weekend Dishes newsletter. She is also the editor of the New York Times Cooking first ever cookbook, one that was given today, Easy Weeknight Dinners, a beautifully curated collection of over 100 of the Times' most beloved recipes. These dishes are simple, satisfying, and full of flavor. I got a little sneak peek, and they're amazing. They're perfect for busy lives, but never short on joy. Together, Doug and Emily will explore how Easy Weeknight Dinners reflects the way we cook, gather, and tell stories through food. Please join me in welcoming Doug and Emily.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see so many people. This is a full room. So welcome to the desert.
Thank you.
Mostly welcome to the Rancho Mirage Library. This is an amazing place.
That's fabulous. I got the tour. It's incredible.
So I wanted to tell Aaron, I'm not sure what a compassionate cook is. I hope I'm known as a compassionate judge, but I'll have to figure out what a compassionate cook is. Maybe you can tell us. But so I want to talk about your book, of course, Easy Weeknight Dinners. I want to talk about your role as the editor-in-chief of the New York Times. I wanted to tell you that when I got this assignment, Debbie and I had the book. We've cooked a bunch of the meals. They're wonderful. They're very good. So I highly recommend the book. I mean, you should be commended. It is really good. But I want to talk about you. You went to Vassar, you went to Columbia and got a master's. What did you study?
So it's funny. So a thing everyone should know is that I am not a chef, and I didn't set out to be a chef. I did set out to be a journalist, and I studied. It's funny what I studied at Vassar. I went to Vassar to be an English major. Vassar is a storied English department, and I always loved to write, and I always loved to read voraciously. And I got to Vassar, and I fell in love with a relatively new discipline, which is urban studies, which was about urban planning and theory and design, architecture, urban issues. It was just so much, and there were really fabulous professors there in the program. And I sort of figured, okay, well, if I'm going to be a journalist, I should I should be thinking about cities in particular in really dynamic ways. So that's what I studied at Vassar, although I have to say, I still haven't read some of the classics that if I just had been an English major. So now I have to read Moby Dick like on my own. But I'm going to do it. And then while I was at Vassar, that was when I really committed to the idea that I was going to work in journalism, and here I am. And then I went to Columbia, and I have an MFA in creative nonfiction writing.
So did you work in journalism generally before the New York Times?
I did, although I started at the New York Times when I was 26. So there weren't that many years. You know, I was very fortunate to land there young, like early in my career. But I worked at the Village Voice. I don't know if anyone remembers the Village Voice. I know. I miss the Village Voice. I had the great fortune to be there while there were still tremendous writers and editors and counterculture figures there. That was very cool. And I worked in magazines too briefly. And these were amazing experiences. I still have dear friends I worked with at those places. You're so in the trenches together. You're up late at night and the whole thing. But I started at the Times when I was 26.
And how did you get into food journalism?
Totally by accident. And I was finishing my MFA at Columbia, and I still had to finish my thesis. You basically have to write a book to graduate from this program. So, an actual book. So I'm writing this book on the side, and I was working, and I ran into a friend of mine from Vassar, who I'd worked with on the school newspaper at Vassar. And I was like, I just need like a freelance job, freelance editing, copy editing, fact checking. These were all skills I had from my time at the Village Voice. And he's like, I heard about this fact-checking job at the New York Times. And we figured it must be the New York Times Magazine, because, magazines fact-check, but newspapers generally don't. So, not intended as a joke. Newspapers don't independently fact-check. The reporter is responsible for fact-checking. You don't have, like, a separate person on staff fact-checking after you, but magazines do.
That's a good clarification.
That is a good clarification, yes. If you're a reporter, you are responsible for your facts. But if you work at a magazine, you have someone like me to check your facts. And so, but the job turned out to be in the dining section at the New York Times. And I loved food, couldn't cook it, but I loved it, and I loved restaurants and always had. And the job turned out to be like the most tedious freelance job. I had to fact check the restaurant listings database. They had this database on the website of like addresses and phone numbers and what the restaurant served, and nobody had touched it in years. And they needed someone to go through every listing and determine, yes, this was a horrible job. But it was a horrible job at the New York Times. And so I got this job. And I connected, the person who hired me turned out to be one of my mentors. Actually, both people who hired me turned out to be mentors, and I still work with one of them. And this was like one of the great moments of good fortune in my career.
So when somebody meets you in a setting like this, or just someone who meets you at a party, did they always assume, just like I did, and I bet everyone here did, is that you were a chef and went to culinary school?
People think that all the time. And then I say, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm an editor. I'm a journalist. No, they do. I totally understand why. And we have a lot of trained chefs on our staff now. We've grown a lot. And we do need people with culinary expertise, of course. But I think part of the magic of NYT Cooking and why it works so well is that we have a lot of editors like me on staff. I've become a very passionate home cook. As soon as I got hired at the Times, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to work in the dining section at the New York Times? Like, I have to learn how to cook, And I had always wanted to learn how to cook. I even owned cookbooks, but I didn't cook from them. And I set about learning to cook. And now at this point, that was almost 20 years ago. And I've cooked a ton since then, and I'm quite a good home cook. But that's still different from running a restaurant kitchen or working as a professional chef. It's just a different skill set.
So a lot of us have really fond memories of when we cooked with our mothers or our grandmothers or our fathers or grandfathers. Did you grow up cooking? No?
I did not. My parents are wonderful. My parents love food. My parents didn't cook when I was a kid. My parents had big careers. They were really busy. And it just, they like to eat well, but it just wasn't a big, like home cooking itself wasn't a big deal. And my grandmother was a great cook. My mother's mother was a wonderful cook. And I grew up outside of New York City and New Jersey, and she lived in Queens. And she would come and she would cook, and my family's Jewish, so it's like matzo ball soup and like chicken in the pot, and this is what my grandmother cooked. And she was just a warm, hilarious, wonderful person. But I didn't even learn to cook from her. I mean, and it's funny now that my mother actually, once she retired, she decided she wanted to learn how to cook. And now my mother is a fabulous cook. So it's this thing we have in common that neither of us did for a very long time.
So I want to talk about your role as editor-in-chief. Mm-hmm. So what does that's your current title, and we'll talk a little bit about the evolution in a minute, but what does that mean on a day-to-day basis to be the editor-in-chief of the New York Times Cooking?
So you're the boss, which is fun, and I'm loving, and I have the most wonderful team, but I'm responsible for this team, right? And I'm responsible for all the work that we publish. And the work is really varied because my department, obviously we produce NYT Cooking. So that's all the recipes, the articles, the videos, everything you see that is published by the New York Times relating to food and cooking, we have done. And that's also the restaurant reviews, like our restaurant critics, news reporting related to restaurants. I don't know if anyone has seen any of our lists. We have like the 50 best restaurants in the United States, 100 in New York City. We're all over the country writing about restaurants and food and how we all eat in America. So there's a lot going on at any given time.
So it really started as a recipe database, and now it's kind of a full digital brand with newsletters and YouTubes and all of these other aspects. So tell us a little bit about how it evolved to that place.
It's a great question. So the Times had, much like that crazy restaurant listing database, the Times had this archive of recipes going back to 1981, a digital archive, because I don't know if anyone here remembers Craig Claiborne's cookbook, the Essential New York Times Cookbook. Yeah, so Craig was the original, he was the original restaurant critic at the New York Times. He basically invented the field. There were no restaurant critics before Claiborne. And he also was a storied home cook and host. And he would, recipes for him were part of his journalism. And he would cook with people, he would eat in their homes, he would eat in restaurants, and then he would get the recipes and publish the recipes in the Times. So the Times has this long history of publishing recipes. And it dates back before Craig Claiborne, too, in the 60s. And we had this archive going back to 1981. And it was about 12 years ago, and the bosses at the Times thought, okay, we need to offer more beyond the news report and the newspaper. We need to be thinking more about different kinds of products that would engage people every day and delight people and help people live their lives better. That's totally separate from the news. So that's the moment NYT Cooking kind of as a project came into being. The Games app, at first it was just crosswords, but now of course it's spelling bee and connections and all the games, and a bunch of other apps as well. But it was just this moment of like, hey, we're sitting on this treasure trove of recipes. And they were very hard to find on our website. They weren't useful. You couldn't really search for them. They didn't have photos. That was a real obstacle. They didn't have any photos. And decided to invest and bring it to life. And then the decision was made to build like an app, right? There was a website and an app. And then, you kind of can't really play in this space unless you're reaching people on social media. And you really can't play in this space increasingly unless you're making videos. And so it kind of built from there, and it's all about, there are we have to create the best recipes, right? They have to be best in class recipes, especially if we're going to ask people to pay for them. There are plenty of recipes online for free. And then also we had to invest in this infrastructure to put them in front of people, to make sure people actually found them, and also so people got to know the creators of the recipes. And video is really effective for that. It's like we want you to know us, right? And we want you to get excited to cook the food, so video helps us make that human connection.
So you started, and you've done restaurant reviews for years and years, but primarily on the East Coast, primarily in New York. But you started a Western State edition. Mm-hmm. Started with a pretty famous restaurant in Los Angeles, Spago. But now you're going to do local West Coast restaurant reviews.
Yes, so we had a longtime restaurant critic, Pete Wells, who was one of the people who hired me. One of those two people who hired me became a mentor. One of them was Pete Wells, who was he was the food editor for a long time, and then he was our restaurant critic for a long time. And he decided to step down from the role last summer. It's actually quite physically grueling to be the restaurant critic. You know, you're out and you're about and you're eating. And so he said, I know, it's hard. It's so hard. It's hard. But, you know.
I have to go to Spago.
He's like, if I see more foie gras. So he told me, he's like, you know, I've had a good run, but it's time for me. Personally, I need to do something else. So he's a reporter now again. He's writing and reporting stories and traveling for the food section. And it's wonderful because I don't know if anyone knows his writing. He's just a fabulous writer, really wonderful writer. But we had this opportunity to really reinvent the coverage. And it was an opportunity we hadn't had for more than a decade. He'd been in the job for, I think, 12 years, start to finish. So we ended up hiring 2 critics. We'd never had 2 chief restaurant critics before, and we have 2 women. That's a new development. Thank you. I was really excited about that. And we have one who's based in New York and one who is based in Los Angeles. And they're both doing a lot of traveling, because the idea really is not just to cover these 2 markets, but to cover the entire country. So Tejal Rao, the critic in Los Angeles in particular, has a mandate to travel, to tell stories about food in the most exciting restaurants, and to revisit some of the classic restaurants around the country, which is where you get to Spago. Where you get to Spago, but and our New York critic as well. She'll focus a little more on New York just because it's our hometown, but she'll be traveling as well.
So you said something, and I love it, and I hadn't really thought about it, but the New York Times Cooking really is more than recipes, but it's about the story of food.
Oh, absolutely.
So tell us about that.
Sure. You know, we really are very much part of the New York Times newsroom. Like, we sit in the New York Times newsroom. We're surrounded by other journalists. We sit right next to the investigative reporters, actually, which is funny for them. And we're always laughing and having a good time and sharing food, and they're off in the corner, you know. They're brilliant. They're brilliant. But you know, we're very much there. And so the values of the newsroom are really part of NYT Cooking. And I would say one of those key values is that food has something to teach people about the world, and this sort of closely related thought that, like, you can understand the world through food. And also that recipes can be a form of journalism, right? And that a recipe, like a news story, can tell you something about a place and a people.
And really, that's what you do with your newsletters. It's not just, here's the food we're going to cook and a recipe. It's the same with your book. It has the contributors. It has comments. So it really, you've made it a story in itself.
That's a nice way to think about it. Yes, there's so much around each recipe. They don't exist in a vacuum. People are interacting with them. They're talking about them. They're commenting on them. We have a very vibrant commenting community. Thank you for laughing at the word vibrant. I have to say, I love the comment section, and I love the commenters. And they're really engaged, and it's hard to imagine NYT Cooking without them. I mean, I think they're really a key part of the experience.
So do you have frequent flyers?
We do have frequent flyers. We do.
Do you have some favorites, both positive and negative?
You know, it's not so much that I have... It's not so much that there is like a favorite person on repeat where it's like, well, Stevie cooked it, so, you know, it's not so much that. It's that sometimes people post comments that are so funny and so outrageous, and they're like little novellas, you know, in the comments, and they're so funny. And so my absolute favorite, there's a recipe that's been on the New York Times website forever called Katharine Hepburn's Brownies. And they are, in fact, a recipe from Katharine Hepburn. And it was published a long time ago. And So in the comments, there's this commenter who was like, I love this recipe. I used to make this recipe all the time. I lived in Germany for a while, and I had this friend, and she would come over, and she asked me for the recipe, but she could never quite get it right. And so finally I was talking her through it, and then she perfected it, and then she stole my husband. And you're reading it, and you're like, what? Yes. Yes. And I'm like, did the brownies do, what role did the brownies play? Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff like that lurking in the comments section. And like, it's just amazing. And it is a reminder that food has a role to play in your personal life.
And so have you used some of those comments in changing the recipes or coming up with a storyline?
That's a great question. So if something is obviously an error, and this isn't just like, I didn't like the recipe or it didn't turn out for me. Of course, we want the recipes to turn out for everyone. And we take a lot of care. I mean, the number of times we edit and test the recipes before they get to you. And we really see it as part of the quality promise. Like if you go into the kitchen with a New York Times recipe and you follow it, no promises for off-roading, but if you follow the recipe, you should get what we hoped that you would get, right? You should get the outcome we were envisioning for you. So if someone just doesn't like it, that's one thing. If it's pretty clear we possibly have an error, like it says 1 tablespoon of something, it should be a teaspoon, we will retest the recipe, and then we'll correct it if we have to.
So I want to talk about that, about testing the recipes and who does that. And one of the reasons I was so happy when Jamie asked me to do this is I thought, well, now I'm going to get invited to this fabulous kitchen at the New York Times, this state-of-the-art kitchen. Do you have a state-of-the-art kitchen at the New York Times?
Well, we don't have it at headquarters. We do have a fabulous kitchen. It's beautiful. It's about a 20-minute walk from our office. So our office is right in Times Square, which is named for the New York Times, Times Square. And then we have a studio space that opened, it was supposed to open in the spring of 2020. So you all know what happened then. But we were able to open it in December of 2020, everyone wearing masks, and we shot our first video then. And it was like a miracle that this space opened. And it's really beautiful. It's in an old industrial building, flooded with light, and we have 2 kitchens there. And one we use for shooting our video, and the other we use for shooting our photography, our recipe photography. So all the photography you see in this book.
So are the recipes tested there, or are they tested someplace else?
They're tested elsewhere. Do you want me to talk?
Sure, tell us about the process. Yeah.
So, a writer, whether it's one of our columnists like Melissa Clark or a contributor or an editor on staff, we decide we're going to proceed with a certain recipe. And maybe it's a version of a recipe that already exists. Maybe it's something entirely new. But you kind of have your assignment the way a reporter would have an assignment. And you go off and you write the recipe. And then your editor receives it, looks it over, and they send it to an independent tester. And that's somebody whose role is to cook the recipe as written and make sure it works. And make sure, first of all, the steps are clear, the amounts are accurate, and you get what you're supposed to get at the end of it. And sometimes the best testers will offer suggestions too. They'll say, what if you added a 1/4 teaspoon more cinnamon, And some of them are really there just to verify that it works. And then it goes back to the editor. It goes through 2 rounds of editing, and then it goes to our studio to be shot. And in order for the photography to be shot, it has to be cooked. So then you've got the food stylist. That's who actually prepares the food and makes it look beautiful for the photo shoots. They make the recipe, and then finally its photo is taken. So all of these people have cooked the recipe and thought about it and read it and edited it before we publish it.
But does it originate in the the recipe developer, the contributor in their home?
It does, yeah. So we're unusual. It used to be that magazines and food publications had test kitchens, and that quite literally was where they developed and tested the recipes. And maybe they shot photos there, maybe they didn't, but they weren't really studios. what we decided to build was a studio. We knew we would need to shoot more photo, more video. The recipes wouldn't be tested there. We had this system in which people cooked it at home. And, there are real pluses and minuses to that system. But one of the really strong pluses is that we know the recipes work in somebody's home kitchen. When you're in a test kitchen, those are professional style appliances. They're more powerful than the stove you probably have at home. It's just a way more controlled and professionalized environment.
So what I love about your book and about the newsletters is that the pictures are so good. And, I kind of want to know where I'm going when it gets finished, if it even looks close to what it was in the picture.
Yeah.
But tell us about taking the pictures, because sometimes I'm not sure if they're real. I'm not saying with yours, but, but how do you take the pictures and what's the process? Because they're really good.
Sure. And so, a lot of professional food photography you just see in ads, and, there's a lot of trickery there. There are non-food materials in those photos, or famously, like on a burger bun they would glue sesame seeds for one of the fast food chains, little tweezers and glue. We don't do any of that. We shoot the recipes exactly as they are written. Sometimes we add garnish, sometimes we take the garnish away, but that's pretty much it. I mean, this is real food, and it sort of has to be for New York Times standards. We don't permit fakery anywhere else in the newsroom. But it is true, it is a professional in our test kitchen. And so that person, the food stylist, they have an assistant, and their job really is to make them look gorgeous and to work with the photographer to make sure, we capture the chicken like in its best light, basically. So they help the chicken find its light, but it is chicken.
But it is the recipe, and it was cooked for that.
It was cooked for that purpose, and it is the recipe, yes.
So let's talk about the book. I mean, you've written extensively and edited extensively about food. So why this book, and why this book now?
So I will say this book is the brainchild of one of my colleagues at the Times, a brilliant colleague named Caitlin Roper, and she is the person at the Times who's responsible for thinking about all the work that we do and how it might live in the world in other ways. And that could be books, it could be TV shows, on streamers. She's got a lot going on. There was actually a big puzzle book that was just published this fall called Puzzle Mania. That's really fun if anybody here is a New York Times puzzler. And so she came to me and she said, I want to do this book. I think we should do, we were already writing this newsletter. And she said, this is great and people should know about this. And we know from our readers and just sort of common sense, but really from our readers, that this is the food that people need and want most. Even the people who love to cook and could spend all day, every weekday and all weekend in the kitchen, still don't have a lot of time to cook dinner and still need ideas for how to cook dinner. And again, that daily question of like, what's for dinner, what's for dinner, what's for dinner, we're really well positioned to answer that question. So she came to me and said, okay, we should do this. And she actually ended up deciding, working with me and some of our colleagues, we have 3 books in this series. And the second one just came out. It's devoted to our cookies and baking. But she wanted to start with Weeknight. She thought, let's plant the flag with Weeknight. And so here we are. It was her vision. And I was sort of like her partner on the ride.
So easy is in the title.
Mm-hmm.
What does easy mean to you?
Well, here's the thing. The easiest thing is to order takeout.
Especially in New York.
Especially in New York, or to buy prepared food, of course, right? So we're sort of starting from a place, if you're buying this cookbook, we're starting from the assumption that you do want to apply heat to ingredients, right? You want to cook. And you probably want to use, mostly fresh ingredients, right? You want to use whole foods. You want to get a head of broccoli and cook it, And from there, we thought, okay, what makes this helpful to people? No recipe takes more than 45 minutes. Maybe actually one is probably 55, but they're all under an hour. I think for a lot of people that's not easy. So there are a bunch that are under 30 minutes. There are some that are under 15 minutes. And we, to make the cut for this book, the ingredient list had to be pretty short, and if the ingredient list isn't super, super short, it's because the cooking time is super, super short. I'm thinking of a dish like a stir fry, where you've got a lot of vegetables to prep, but that's the recipe, and then you cook it for about 5 minutes and it's done. This one is actually dear to my heart because most people who are home cooks don't have somebody next to them doing the dishes. They each only use no more than 2 pots or pans, or 1 pot or pan and 1 big piece of other equipment that you'd have to clean, like a blender. And for me to take out the blender after a day of work is I have to really want to make the recipe. I'm a lot of ways, I'm a working parent, so I'm also the audience for this book. So I think a lot about would I be willing to do this after work?
And what about ingredients? Did you take into consideration ingredients you normally have at your home, or you get the recipe at 5 o'clock and you got to run to the market?
I always avoid that. I avoid anything where the recipe won't work if you don't have the freshest thing. Mussels are a really good example of an ingredient you won't see in this book. And mussels are sustainable, delicious, fast cooking, easy to cook. You just put mussels in a pot with some liquid and some salt, and you steam them, and they're delicious. And you serve them with pasta or bread, and it's the simplest dinner. But you gotta go to the store, you gotta buy the mussels. I wouldn't eat old mussels, and so it's not in the book. And likewise, anything that feels like a special trip, I don't want to make a special trip after work. I have a long day and I want to get home and I want to cook with what's there. And like a lot of people too, I do 1 big grocery shop every week, or I'll go to a few stores on the weekends. I don't stop on the way home from work.
Was it hard to limit it to 100?
We have so many great recipes. The puzzle is more making sure they feel varied, because we have, I could have done this book 3 times over. It would have been totally possible to do that, but you don't want too many seafood dishes with lemon, and you don't want too many recipes that are too spicy, but you also want the variety of spice and interesting flavors. For me as an editor, always in this book and always, it's about finding the right mix of elements, because that's sort of where the magic happens.
So was it a badge of honor to be the last recipe in the book? Or was that one that just barely made it? It's on page 248. It's chilaquiles, which I love. Was it conscious to put that in the end?
Oh, you mean it's because it's literally the last?
Literally the last recipe.
It's, you know what? It was not the last recipe chosen for the book. It's just the recipe in that chapter that takes the longest. Here's a tip about this book. It's spelled out in the introduction, but it's kind of easy to miss, I think. Each chapter is organized from the recipes that are fastest to the recipes that take a little more time. Yes. So if you just want to be in and out of that kitchen, the beginning of each chapter is where you want to be. The chilaquiles take a tiny bit more time, but they're by a fabulous chef and recipe writer, and they are quite delicious.
So when I was a kid, I loved to eat ice cream. This will sound terrible, but I loved to eat ice cream with potato chips.
That sounds great.
So I wanted to give you a shout out to the recipe on 124, which is tuna crunch sandwich. A tuna sandwich with potato chips. Mm-hmm. I thought that was fabulous. So
it's really good with salt and vinegar potato chips. Oh. Yes.
And I understand you also like peanut butter and pickle sandwiches?
That is a famous New York Times recipe. And I have to confess, I have never had it. Oh. I've never had it. But I bet it's good.
We'll have to
I can see it. It's like the vinegar of the pickles, right? Yeah.
So was there a recipe in the book that surprised you, that turned out to be better than you expected?
By the time they get to me, everyone's really hammered out the kinks, I will say. better than expected. There are a few that are so simple, it's like kind of crazy how good they are. I will say that. And those are my favorite recipes on all of NYT Cooking. I call it like the light bulb moment, like the brilliant twist, or like the brilliant trick. That's just, it makes your life a little easier and the food is delicious.
So was there one that you wanted in the book but didn't make it?
No, all my favorites are in here. My favorites are in here. And these are recipes I really love. And I feel very adamant about that. And, I write a weekly newsletter, too, with these recipes, these kinds of recipes in it. And in many ways, the book is really built on that newsletter. And it's called 5 Weeknight Dishes, and that's exactly what it is. It's 5 recipes that I offered to you all in the spirit of, like, I hope you find at least one that calls out to you. And I feel really, I wouldn't, every once in a while we put out a recipe where I'm like, I bet that works, but that's just kind of not for me. And has nothing to do with cuisine or anything. And it's just kind of not for me. And I do think that you can tell if a writer is not excited about something when it's meant to be a personal recommendation. So I vouch for everything in here. Yeah.
So for those of us who got the book and are going to take it home, what's the biggest takeaway you want?
That cooking makes your life better. That cooking really can make your life better. And I know there are people who hate to cook and they'll never like to cook, and I totally get it and I respect it. And people have different things going on and they want to focus their energies elsewhere. But I think for a lot of people, cooking just makes your daily life better. It makes you happier, healthier. You have that moment where you sit down to eat, whether it's just you or somebody you love, you and some friends. It creates a sort of force field of happiness in your home. It's creative. Even if you're just following the recipe, it's like a creative act. It's something you can do every day that's creative, but you don't have to like go off into a room and be a genius and think of it. You just do it with your hands. I think learning to cook is just a gift you can give yourself, and it's not hard. All you have to do is just keep doing it.
So I love what you just said. This, in some sense, wasn't one of my questions. Food is emotional, and we have memories and experiences around food. It may have been a food gathering. It may have been some other event. Thanks to Jamie, who introduced Debbie and I at a dinner at a local restaurant on September 30th a few years ago. We go back there every September 30th with Jamie and have dinner because it creates that emotional moment. So
Jamie's invited to the anniversary dinner?
Of course.
That's wonderful.
But how do you try to capture that then in your newsletters and your videos and that?
It's so funny because you can't quite capture whatever the emotion is going to be to a particular person, right? But you can, I think, write about food in a way and talk about it in a way that kind of leaves space for people to bring their own feelings to it, right? And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do. And also try to offer an opening for people, to connect. As I mentioned, I have small children, and I find that parents, I get really nice notes from parents a lot. Working parents who are like, thank you for, and people want to feel seen. I think that's just true in every way. People want to feel seen and they want to feel heard. And for someone to be talking to them about food, there are ways to do that can be sort of a powerful way to make people feel seen and heard.
So when you started this journey in food journalism, did you ever envision this aspect of it? I mean, because really what you're talking about is being a journalist. But you're talking about something simple like recipes. So did you see that?
I couldn't even
when
cook.
When you were 26?
No, honestly, this has been the wildest ride and the most fun. And really interesting and challenging. And it's really wonderful. One of the wonderful things about this book is that we've had so many events. And then you just really see in the real world. And people tell me all the time they love NYT Cooking, which is, of course, really nice to hear. Or they love this writer or that writer. But the most the best thing, my favorite thing, is when they tell me they love a recipe. And somebody is like, oh my God, I make the red lentil soup with lemon. I make it twice a month, and meeting people or just people I know, like having these conversations about these recipes is really, it's so cool and it's so fun, and each recipe really does have a life of its own out in the world. But no, I did not foresee any of this for myself, and I have to say it's the best. It's so great.
So back to the book for one more question. So for those of us who are going to take the book home tonight and open it for the first time, tell us how you envision they should use the book, or how did they start with the book?
Well, gosh, I mean, here's the thing. To get really good at cooking, and I imagine there are a bunch of people here who are already experienced cooks. Maybe you don't feel that way, but you want to cook more. Pick something you like and just cook it a bunch of times. I mean, all of this is just about getting comfortable in the kitchen. So I think if you're an experienced cook, you can open this book and know exactly where to go. It's organized by main ingredient, and there are a bunch of different flavors, ingredients, cuisines. There's so much in here to explore. So it's for those of you, I think you're all set probably. I think for anybody who's less confident in the kitchen, pick something that you feel like you could eat a few times, you won't just be one and done, and really cook the recipe and get to know it. And I think that's good advice for any cookbook too, anything you're learning to cook, baking in particular. Baking really rewards repetition.
So I love to have authors and writers read something they wrote, and this is one of your 5 Weeknight Dishes emails that comes out. It was October 21st of 2025. And maybe you could, because I want them to see how, if they haven't, how well you write and how you create a story. So maybe if you can just read from there to where it ends on the next page.
Sure. Okay. If the dinner problem, defined broadly as what should I make for dinner, is difficult to solve, picture solving it every night for the choosiest audience imaginable. This audience is not composed of food critics or exacting chefs. It's children. Nothing in the kitchen is more reliably frustrating than trying to feed a picky one. I say all of this with love. And this is why my wonderful colleague Margot Lasky has created a collection of 18 kid-friendly recipes to please whole families. There's a link to the recipes. Whole families, children and adults eating the same meal in harmony. And Margot also spoke with a nutritionist who offered helpful tips for feeding the picky. 4 recipes from that list are below. I was just going to feature one, but they look so good I picked a whole bunch. Along with a personal favorite, my own children scarf down routinely. And then you've got the recipes.
So, what's the recipe that your kids like so much?
Let me make sure I got the right one. My kids like a bunch of these recipes, actually, especially my older daughter. My younger daughter, she's specific. Okay. All right, this recipe is actually, it's called Everyday Dal. So this is an Indian dish. It's a staple on cooking. My children absolutely love red lentils in particular, and it's cooked very simply. Not a lot of spices. If you're an adult, I would add more spices, and they eat it with rice. And I make it for them sometimes. Their babysitter actually was the one who got them started eating it, and they love it, and it's healthy. And we eat meat at home, but it's this vegetarian dinner that my children ask for and eat every single week. So that is the recipe.
So this is just a random question out of the middle of nowhere. Do you make your friends nervous when you go to their house for a home cooked meal?
It's funny you ask that. People don't invite me for dinner very much. And I'm like, come on, guys. I'm right here. You know what, though? The ones who do invite me over, I don't get the sense they're nervous, because the thing about me, and part of the reason I have this job in the first place, is that I really love food, and I appreciate your efforts, and I eat just about everything. So if I come to your house, I'm going to love every minute. I'm going to bring wine. I'm not going to try to bring something to upstage anybody. I might not be able to do it anyway. I actually have a lot of friends who really love to cook, and they're great cooks, and their careers have nothing to do with food. They just really like to cook. But yeah, I'm a really appreciative audience. So tell them to, and people should invite me over more. I bring wine.
So I'm going to get back to where I was when I said I wanted to switch gears. So how has food journalism changed as a result of the significant influence of social media? What have you seen in that regard?
Oh, revolutionized, totally different. Totally different. I mean, there used to be a handful of magazines and then sections in newspapers and cookbooks. And this was all like very traditional media and publishing, and they published the recipes, and a number of them were extremely influential, like Gourmet magazine, of course, and Martha Stewart Living, and all the big cookbook publishers. Sorry, what was that? Somebody say another one? Sunset out here in the West, yep. And hugely influential. And a lot of that has really gone away. A lot of it's faded. And that's more of a story, I think, about how the broader media landscape is changing too. But we live in a world where you can get any recipe at any time, of any quality, truthfully, and you can get it instantaneously, and it'll come with a personal story, and you probably never heard of the person. It's not personal to you, but there'll be some emotion attached to it, and it's compelling. Or, you can go on Instagram or TikTok and watch somebody making it, or YouTube. It's just also instantaneous, and there are so many voices. It's really loud. It's really noisy. We're one of the last big, recipe publishing entities left, brands left out there. It's a pretty profound shift.
And before, as home cooks, we bought a book, we looked at a magazine, we followed some famous chef. And like you said, now you've got TikTok and YouTube. Now you have AI.
Yeah.
So has AI already changed what you do at the New York Times?
Yes, it really has. Well, I would say, we're going to use AI in a couple different ways, I think, at the Times. And in cooking specifically, I mean, there are ways AI can be helpful. We're never going to use AI to create the actual recipes. We're not going to do that. And the New York Times isn't going to do that to produce any of the reporting or the writing that you read broadly, or any of the videos. But AI in the kitchen is pretty useful. So we introduced a tool on the cooking app on phones. So not on the website, like on your laptop or your computer, your desktop, but on your phone, where you can click a button and AI converts all the measurements to metric. So now all of a sudden there are people in English-speaking countries around the world that can cook our recipes. And, because obviously when you develop recipes in the United States, you're using US standard measurements, cups and et cetera, and ounces, and but the rest of the world is on metric. So there are useful things, also scaling. A lot of people want to know, how do I make this recipe for 2 people or 1 person? How do I make this recipe for 6 or 12 people? And AI is, because it's not always a case of, well, just have it or double it. Sometimes it's more nuanced than that, and AI can do that. But I will say we're figuring out, AI can already write recipes, and they're going to be good enough for the vast majority of people. Right? They really will be. AI is getting better every day. So we think about, what can we offer people, what can we give people that is compelling to them when AI can do the service in an instant. And I do think it's the stories, and I do think it's the humanity of it, and I do think it's doubling down on the humanity of the work. But it's something we talk about a lot.
So we've all lived through all kinds of food trends. Are there some upcoming trends we should know about that you're following?
Gosh. People always ask this, and a lot of them you probably know about. I mean, so proteins, like our societal obsession with protein is still really going strong, and it's really, really building. And I do believe fiber is next. Haven't really wrapped my head around that one yet. I think, we really are seeing people more interested in eating less meat. Or perhaps it's not that they want to eat less meat specifically, but they want to eat more vegetables. And we see that across age groups, and for different reasons. A lot of it's health, some of it's, related to animal welfare.
And you have a newsletter on veggies, right?
We do. We have a vegetarian newsletter called The Veggie. That's really fun. And it doesn't position vegetarian food as health food. It's just fun, delicious food that, by the way, doesn't include meat, It does use dairy products. It's not a vegan newsletter. So that is the big thing I see is it's sort of the obsession with fiber and protein and sort of the health aspect, and then moving way, way more towards vegetables and away from meat.
Do you have a way to, when I go look at a recipe, do you have a way to track that? Do you keep kind of a data bank as to how many times a recipe is reviewed or looked at by someone?
We don't have a big leaderboard, but it's very easy for us to get that information, and not on a personal level. We don't personally surveil people's cooking habits. Don't worry. But yeah, of course, we can see how many times a recipe page is visited, is clicked on. We can see how many times people have rated it, issued a star rating, or commented on it. We don't have a way of knowing if you've actually cooked it. But if you've returned a bunch of times, I think we feel comfortable assuming that you've probably cooked it. You've looked at it, you decided to cook it, you go back to it to make a shopping list, then you have to actually cook it, and maybe it takes place over, maybe you cook it, you set it up in the marinade one day and you cook it the next day, so you actually look at it quite a number of times.
But you do tell us the most viewed recipe for each year, don't you?
Yes, exactly. So that's the data we use to make those lists.
And what was it for 2024? Do you remember?
Oh gosh, off the top of my head. I feel like, so the thing about me is that the entire cooking catalog is like in my brain. There are like 24,000 recipes in here. I can't remember. Do you know what the number one was?
It was, I don't. I wrote it down, but I didn't write it here. And I kept it at home. So, but you do have, and then you have the 50 greatest hits, right?
We do have the 50 greatest hits.
Tell us what that is.
50 greatest hits this is a little harder to track. Those lists favor the recipes that have been around longer because more people have had a chance to cook them. But I think what you're referring to is our anniversary package from last year. So last year we celebrated the 10th anniversary of NYT Cooking, the launch of NYT Cooking, which was really exciting for us because when we launched, everybody thought nobody would pay for recipes, and they will, they do. So we made it to our 10th birthday. Thank you. We celebrated. We had a party. It was great. We had like a birthday cake at the office for NYT Cooking, and it had a photo of the first screen that we launched with like the recipe of the day, and it was fun. So our 50 greatest hits, we decided we wanted to celebrate, but we wanted to do something. We didn't want it to feel like, here we are telling you what our favorites are. We really wanted it to be about the community. And so we kind of came up with these different metrics to assess what the greatest hits were. And of course, one was popularity on the site in terms of how many times have people visited the recipe, how many times have they rated it. The star rating is probably the best proxy we have for actually cooking it, So how many times people rated it, a lot of views on social media, so recipes that were popular off New York Times platforms, but very popular, best comments, the recipes that have those sort of classic, amazing comments, the ones that really had a big life to live out in the world, and we narrowed that down to 50. But it does privilege some of the older recipes when you look at just sort of the most popular over time. It's just everyone's had more time to make like the no-knead bread, which is one of the most famous New York Times recipes.
So I think I told you that, I've been doing this for Jamie for a number of years, and it's interesting when someone knows I'm going to interview somebody what they want me to ask. And you and Leonard Nimoy's son were probably the ones where people came to me the most. So someone told me I needed to ask you about a fire that you had in your kitchen.
So I write about this in the book as like an example of how if you just stick with it, you too can learn to cook. But as I said earlier, I started working at the Times, the food section, and I was like, oh, got to learn to cook. And I wanted to learn to cook. It felt like it was time, and I really did want to do it. And And so I just started cooking, and I wrote about it. And that helped me kind of stay on pace. I would write about it. But I would choose recipes from books. My colleagues would help me. They'd say, you should try this book or that book, like really great instructional books for cooks. And I would cook, and I would invite people over. And because I didn't really know how to cook, I didn't know that you shouldn't invite people over. If you don't know how to cook, you shouldn't tell them dinner's at 8, because dinner is going to be at 11. And people, I lived in Brooklyn. I lived in this small apartment. People would kind of be hanging around while I had this tiny kitchen. I didn't have good habits around cooking. So any experienced cook will tell you to clean as you go. Like clean your workstation, wash the cutting board. Don't let things accumulate. Take a minute and get organized. And not only did I not do that, but I wouldn't empty the sink before I started cooking a big meal. I know. My husband is very strict about this. He knows if I'm cooking something big, he's got everything cleaned. He's I don't want to deal with this stacking up, But I didn't know that. So one night I had 2 friends over. I was cooking something, and the kitchen was just a total mess, things everywhere, including a vase full of dried hydrangeas and a bunch of printed out recipes that were stained with olive oil. And both of these had somehow ended up right next to the stove. So something from a pot dripped over, sent a flare up from the burner, which then set the oily pieces of paper on fire, which then set the hydrangeas on fire. And if you can picture dried hydrangeas, they've got a big head. So they were like torches in my kitchen. And there were 3 of them. And everyone starts screaming, and one of my friends is just she's just frozen and she's just screaming. And the other one is running around opening windows. And I grab them from the vase and I go to run them under the faucet in the kitchen. But the sink is too full of dishes. You can't even get something between the stuff in the sink and the faucet. I was a total disaster. And I was and then I ran to the bathroom and I threw him in the bathtub and I cranked the shower on, and that was that, So I took care of it. And so, where else is there water in this tiny apartment? But yeah, and that was a real life lesson.
Sorry.
Also, who keeps dried flowers next to the stove in the kitchen? Anyway.
So I just want you to finish with reading this paragraph on page 9.
The last paragraph? Oh, sure. This is the intro to the cookbook. Okay. I've always described my newsletter as being for busy people who still want something good to eat. That's me and my friends and family, and I'm guessing it's you too. It's hard to throw cooking into the whirring cycles of daily life. I hope these recipes make it a little easier and life more delicious. After all these years of cooking and building confidence in the kitchen, I still have recipes and I keep coming back to them, and I hope you do too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you
You're
so
really
much.
fun to interview.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you so much.